My name is Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible, published by John Wiley & Sons, the largest book ever written on the subject of social media. And today we are here with, believe it or not, Vint Cerf, the father of the Internet. Need I say more? Wow. And we'll be speaking today about social media and its effects on the Internet. So let's get started. Vint, please tell our listeners a little bit about your background and that project that you worked on a few years ago that some people might have heard about.
Well, first of all, labeling me the father of the Internet is not fair to an awful lot of people, especially to Bob Kahn, because Bob started the program when he was in the Defense Department in 1972, and then he came to me when I was at Stanford in early 73 and said, I have this problem. How do I hook all these different nets together? So the two of us did the basic Internet design and started the design of the TCP/IP protocols, but there are many, many people, both before and after that stage, who have contributed to make the net what it is today. So I'm just happy that I could participate in it because it's been a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. That's to say the least. It was probably the most important technology that changed the world, and you participated in it. So for that, I give you kudos. That's pretty exciting. Social media, that's what this is all about. And with your background since the conception of the Internet, what do you see the effect of social media, trusted networks, user-generated content, two-way communication? How do you see that kind of affecting and the Internet and how the interaction?
It certainly has been something of a surprise to me that the users of the Internet, the consumers of information, have now become the producers of information on the network. It's very widespread. It shows up in a number of different forms. It shows up as blogs. It shows up as video uploads to YouTube and other similar services. It shows up at social game sites, things like World of Warcraft or Second Life. It's showing up as people with their own web pages, email distribution lists, and the like. Now, some of those things have been around for a while. Email, of course, was invented in 1971, so it's an old media in some sense, but still very heavily used as our distribution lists. There's chat, and there are other kinds of more real-time things, and including video now. So all of these different ways of interacting have been very rapidly absorbed by the public. Mobiles, which have only recently come on the scene, now account for some 3 billion users in the not on the Internet, but in the mobile world. But the Internet interfaces to many of the mobiles, and so people are beginning to do texting in the mobile world. They're doing instant messaging. They're doing email exchanges. They're searching the web from their mobiles. So what I'm seeing right now is a wide range of choices that people have in maintaining relationships and in interacting with people one-on-one and in groups. And I think this is likely to persist. Certainly, the sharing of information in the net has been dramatic. In the scientific world, equally so, where scientists begin to build common databases that they can make reference to, like the Human Genome Database or astronomical information or geophysical information, we're finding that scientific results occur faster because people have reference to virtually everything that is known about some particular phenomenon because it's been codified in these shared databases. So now we're seeing an increasing amount of collaborative work in the online environment, something which Google, of course, is intensely interested in.
Yeah, and that leads to kind of the next question. How do you feel about it? I mean, do you see that it's made social media is a positive contribution to the Internet?
Well, I have mixed feelings, to be honest with you, and the reason for this is that some of the interactive modes strike me as being a waste of time, but this may be a generational problem, not anything more fundamental than that. Another problem, though, is that in these media, it's possible to be abusive, and I am very concerned about the side effect of cyberbullying and things of that sort. Others have expressed a discomfort with the fact that anything and everything can be expressed on the Internet, including negative information, whether it's accurate or not. It sometimes has an impact. So we have let's say, a potential for both positive and constructive and also rather negative kinds of interactions in this online environment. And I think we're still trying to learn how to discipline ourselves and how to treat these different media in a way that protects us from some of the abusive behaviors. And I'm thinking not merely the social media, but more generally speaking, things like viruses and worms and things that are key loggers that are looking for usernames and passwords or identifiers of account numbers and things of that kind. Sure. Those are all fairly pernicious abuses of this online medium. And I think we're still trying to learn how to cope with it socially and legally, as well as from the law enforcement point of view.
One of the things in the research for the Social Media Bible book I came across, it was kind of a revelation to me, is that one way or another we've been censored in all of our media. I mean, going back all the way to the Gutenberg press, there's either been some government agency or the sponsor of whatever was being produced. And for the first time, the Internet is not governed by the FCC. It's not governed by any government agency. Do you kind of see that maybe happening at some time?
Well, first of all, I think you made a misstatement. The FCC believes that it is responsible for all communications in the United States. And it doesn't mean that it's responsible for communications outside the United States, but it has chosen to treat Internet as a Title I information service. Now, there are some side effects of that which I think are not relevant to this discussion, but they're of concern to me, having a lot to do with common carriage and things like that. But the FCC has chosen to forbear to regulate, except in cases of what it considers to be anti-competitive practices. And you'll note that there was a recent decision by the FCC with regard to Comcast and its attempt to manage network use in the presence of BitTorrent and other kinds of peer-to-peer file sharing applications. The FCC censored the Comcast company for the way in which it undertook to do that management. There are, of course, other places in the world that are even more actively trying to control access to and use of the Internet. You're going to find that everywhere. The Internet is global in scope. It operates in virtually every country in varying degrees, and countries have different views of what people should or shouldn't be able to do on using this medium. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is that no matter what position you take with regard to usage, you have the problem that if your position is different from some other country's view, there's nothing that you can do to enforce your view and vice versa. And so then you get into this question of, gee, under my rules, my citizen was attacked by a person in another country, and I'm looking for some kind of compensation. You will not be able to deal with those problems unless there are more common agreements about what is or isn't acceptable behavior on the Internet. And since the social views vary from one country to another, I think it's going to be hard for us to come to global agreements, but I think we will come to some agreements commonly. An example is, I think, as far as I know, every country in the world rejects child pornography as an unacceptable form of behavior, whether it's on the Internet or otherwise. So maybe there are other things that we can agree are commonly unacceptable and therefore should be either prevented or punished if they are detected. But it's going to take a lot of international work to make that a reality.
That's a really good point that you bring up. Again, I think in the U.S. we are somewhat U.S.-centric in our views of the Internet, and that's exactly right. Every country has its own social mores, And for China, for example, and its ban on some of the internet access and Google, that's absolutely true. And then you do have international fraud, such as the bankers contacting us out of North Africa, and especially in the Asian countries too, as well as Russia now is getting to be a problem.
Well, that's all correct. And it's by the way, I would like to say something about China. It's quite interesting. When you talk to people in the street, so to speak, you discover that some number of them actually appreciate the censorship. They like it. They believe they're being protected. Now, whether that's true or not is independent of how they feel about it, or how they at least say they feel about it. So we shouldn't make the assumption that the First Amendment notion, which is powerful in our Constitution, is necessarily universally accepted as preferable. There are cultures where, in fact, the citizens want this kind of control.
That's a really good point.
Now, not everyone in China feels that way, and of course I don't mean to suggest they do, but it's surprising to find that not everyone thinks like an American either.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, in social media, it has kind of a social perspective of power to the people, freedom from censorship, and of course, as Will Rogers once said, thank God we don't get all of the government that we pay for. And I had a conversation, an interview with Kevin Marks from Google Open Social. And I thought Open Social was really fascinating because it kind of touches on what we're talking about here, where they're trying to set up a standard for all communication, all information exchange between social networking sites and other types of sites. But the cool thing is that they're actually doing it on a global basis. And even though there's companies like LinkedIn, MySpace, Facebook, which are perceived competitors, they've all gotten together, as well as Europe, South America, China, to kind of come together in a commonality to create these standards. And I thought that was pretty cool that it were, even across communist countries, that were actually, for the first time, have this commonality pulling people together. And it's the internet.
Well, you know, reminds me of an interesting phenomenon that happened in the late 1980s. I had asked permission from the U.S. federal government to connect MCI Mail, which is a commercial email service, up to the internet. And they reluctantly allowed me to do that. The reluctance came from the concern that we would be carrying or using government-sponsored backbones to carry commercial email traffic.
Yeah.
But after I put the MCI Mail system up on the internet, immediately the other email service providers said, well, you know, the MCI people shouldn't have an exclusive privilege. And so CompuServe came up, and OnTime came up, and some of the other commercial email servers also came up on the net. And the side effect of this was that they could suddenly interchange email with each other through the internet, which before they couldn't do.
Wow.
And so it's this standardization that creates the possibility of interoperability. And this is why our Open Social, I think, is an important effort, because if it creates interoperability among the various social networks, I think it will be very attractive for the users of those networks to be able to interact regardless of which of the social network systems you happen to be registered in.
Yeah,
so, we may see some interesting consequences of that interconnection as people begin to adopt it. There'll be interactions that we might not have anticipated that are enabled by that standard.
True. And one of the things that's exciting, at least to me, is that I do the research over the last couple of years on social media. I'm finding that really what kind of sparked social media and this interaction really was a convergence of all of the different electronics in a digital format. Digital telephone communication, digital music, digital photographs. The computer, of course, is digital. And it seems that that's kind of what sparked it. Overall, what's your opinion? Do you think that all of this technology coming together is a good thing? I mean, do you see some positives coming out of this?
Well, I'm, of course, perhaps understandably excited and feel positive about a lot of these new developments. The Internet was designed to be fairly insensitive to specific media, so it doesn't know if it's carrying a digital image or a voice or a video or some other digitized object, part of a program or a piece of a web page. It just doesn't know, and that's very deliberate. It was intended to be a general-purpose transport mechanism, and the consequences of that, I think, have been just as you say. Every device that produces digital output potentially can be interfaced to the Internet, and this output transferred around and delivered to other places. I think that we're going to see a very significant increase in the number of devices that are able to connect to and interact with other devices on the Internet. There's been some discussion about the earlier phases of Internet being Internet for everyone, and now it's becoming Internet for everything. And I really do believe that. I think sensor networks, appliances, things at home, in the office, in the automobile that you carry around will all be Internet-enabled, and this allows us to manage them better. These devices can report their status to us. They can accept command and control from third parties. You can imagine entertainment systems being managed over the Internet by third-party entertainment managers. You simply click here if you want this movie or that song, and it takes care of the details of getting it to the CD player in the car, or the hard disk that replaces the CD player, or your iPod, or some other DVR or what have you. All of these are possible once these devices become part of the Internet, and of course mobiles are contributing to that, because as they become more and more prevalent with Internet capability, they too will become remote controllers for many, many devices.
And that's a really good point. One of the things I heard the other day is that some of the new cars, actually, when it's time to change the oil, the car will send you a text message.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I have an instrumentation system, sensor system in my house. It's actually running IP version 6, which is the new advanced Internet protocol. Is scheduled to slowly replace IP version 4, which is what most people are running today. But this system gathers humidity and temperature from sensors scattered around the house, especially the one in the wine cellar, and it reports on a daily basis what its status is. And I can get little charts showing me what the variations in temperature and humidity have been over the course of a month or 6 months or a year.
Wow.
And when things break, I get emails saying the following sensor is not working, and we haven't heard from it for the last 2 days. Please change the battery or do something. So I expect that we're going to see more and more environments like that, where the appliances that are around us are part of the network and are capable of telling us what their condition is and accepting advice from us about what to do.
Yeah, I love that. In the mid-'80s, I built the first computer to save a human life, blah, 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 and worked with physically disabled, and actually pioneered some of the work on environmental control and smart house, smart home. And this has kind of given that whole smart home thing a whole different spin. A couple of weeks ago, I did a blog on a little device that you can buy now to put into your house plants, and when if the house plant gets dry, it sends you a text message. It actually tweets you to tell you that it's dry, and if you don't water it, it keeps annoying you, and if you overwater it, it complains.
Hey, where do I get some of those? My wife is a huge fan of houseplants.
Oh, really?
Is this something that's a product?
Yeah, actually, it's two products that's kind of put together. It's a little electronic board that costs about $48, and then there's a typical digital moisture sensor. I'll send you the article and a link to the webpage.
I'd appreciate that. There are two companies I've dealt with in the past for sensor networks like this. One's called ArchRock, and the other one's called Crossbow. And it didn't occur to me until you just mentioned it that a dryness sensor would be a perfect. I'm taking notes here. This is a really good idea.
Well, just go to lonsafko.com, click on blogs, and the article is right in there. That's a little self-promotion.
Look, that's great.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Well, what else would you like to talk about?
Well, real quick, you mentioned the IP version 6, and some people have been talking about a total rewrite of the Internet because of the packet design and the speed of transmission. Do you think that we're going to see that sometime soon?
Well, let me see. Let's distinguish IP version 6 from the what's called clean sheet efforts to look at what a redesigned Internet would look like. IPv6 was standardized about 1996, and it's been a very slow process to get people to implemented in parallel with v4, but we are now sure that we're going to run out of IPv4 address space, unique address space, somewhere in the 2010 to 11 time frame at the current rate of assignment of these Internet addresses. Google has already started implementation of IPv6 together with IPv4. If you go to ipv6.google.com, you will actually see our IP version 6 search site with a logo that's animated, which is one way of letting you know that you're on the v6 service instead of v4. It's going to take a lot of time to proliferate the IPv6 protocols everywhere. But these are not a major departure architecturally from IPv4. The things you've been hearing about with regard to redesign of the Internet are really research programs asking the question, now that we've been around the Internet for over 30 years in one form or another, what have we learned and what would we do differently if we could design it all over again? And I know there are a number of things I would certainly choose to do differently, mostly having to do with security and authenticity, but also dealing with broadcast media in addition to point-to-point connections, and several other kinds of aspects of the network's design. So, along with others, I'm participating in that exercise to say what would it look like if we started over. Whether or not we get to start over is really an open question. One could make the argument that there's such a huge investment in the Internet today that one couldn't imagine starting over again, and yet we could have said that same thing about the telephone network in 1973 when Bob Kahn and I started the design of the Internet.
And television has gone digital.
The same is true. So it's not impossible to imagine something new that isn't the Internet, it's something else, arising and perhaps eventually, if not supplanting it, at least augmenting it, which is what's happened with the telephone world today. I mean, the telephone network is still there, the Internet is there, although increasingly people are using the Internet to carry all forms of media, including traditional telephony. And it may very well be that over time the traditional telephone network simply gives way to broadband Internet access. The possibility of a complete redesign and something new that isn't the Internet, but it's a successor, is not out of the question in my view, but it might also take a fair amount of time to have any direct impact on the world's population.
And more than likely be transparent to the users.
Well, I don't know. That's a very good question. I think that certainly the Internet has not been transparent, nor has voice over IP been transparent to the users. I mean, you're very conscious of the difference between an ordinary telephone call and what you typically do to deal with voice over IP, although I guess it's fair to say that if you take your PBX, your private automated branch exchange, and turn it into a voice over IP box, the phone still looks the same. It's just that, your voice gets packetized. You just didn't know that. So, yes and no. Transparency is possible, but I think it won't always be guaranteed.
Okay. And just to conclude here, is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners about what you're working on, about social media? And most importantly, you're considered a futurist. Where do you think we're going with this? What do you think it's going to be in 10 years, 20 years?
Well, there are two themes that are probably worth mentioning. On the social media side, I'm persuaded that people are going to increasingly use this Internet base and all the various social media applications on it as a way of maintaining friendships that they've established. In some cases, they will encounter new friends. I suspect some of the gaming environments have a way to do that, and I guess there are social, I don't want to quite call them dating services, but there are services for people to discover each other, put it that way, on the net. And I hear stories about people meeting and eventually getting married through this medium. So I think we're going to see more evolution of the social networking environment. We're certainly going to see increased ability to interact in richer and richer ways. Today, we have video, we have audio, we have 3D-like environments rendered for us, like Second Life. Eventually, I suspect that haptic interfaces, touch interfaces, will be possible. Also three-dimensional presentations where two or three or some number of parties can be inside a 3D environment that's not just presented in a 2D way on a screen. Sort of like the Star Trek holodeck, although I don't think we're anywhere close to the elaborateness of that idea. But I have seen some very impressive 3D display technology in the academic world that ultimately I think will become commercially available. The other thing which is happening that I'm quite interested in is the extension of the Internet to operate across the solar system. The purpose here is to support manned and robotic exploration, and new standard protocols are required to overcome some of the deficiencies of trying to communicate in deep space, whether it's very, very long delays, like hours of round-trip times, or disrupted communications because of celestial motion. So I've been working with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and with NASA on the design of an interplanetary extension of the Internet, and that's now rapidly maturing. We'll be doing deep space testing next month in October, and then we'll be on the International Space Station next year.
Wow. And
if all goes well, these protocols will become standardized internationally and will be used in new space missions so that all the various explorers of space will have spacecraft that are able to interwork if they choose to take advantage of that.
How amazing. It's not just global now, we're actually talking intergalactic.
Well, we're not intergalactic. This is strictly interplanetary, and you should make sure to distinguish between the two. The distances between galaxies are really huge, and even between stars is a problem. I'm starting to think about an interstellar extension here, but the round-trip times are going to be years at best at the speed of light. So that doesn't make for a very lively conversation.
Is there any place that is absolutely fascinating? I know our listeners as much as probably myself. I'd like to learn more about that. Is there anything that's being published at all on the web? Does NASA have anything?
Absolutely. If you go, for the technical side of it, if you go to www.DTN, that stands for just Delay Tolerant Networking, DTNRG Research Group, .org, www.dtnrg.org, you can find out more about the technical details of the program. As we get these deep space tests done, we will probably also report the results at the Interplanetary Network Special Interest Group, IPNSIG.org. That site needs to be updated, and it hasn't been for a while. So those are two places to go to find out more.
That's really exciting. I'd really like to thank you, Vint, for being here today. Thank you so very much for sharing that.
Not at all. It's a pleasure to chat, and I certainly hope that our paths will cross again in the future.
I'm looking forward to that again. Thank you. This has been Lon Safko, the co-author of the Social Media Bible. Be sure to check out the other valuable social media tactics, tools, and strategies that can be found in the Social Media Bible book, as well as our companion website, the Social Media Bible. For more information on me, Lon Safko, please visit my website at www.lonsafko.com. And Vint, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking this time today.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye for now.
Take care.